Change is, as you know, a complex thing or even complicated to happen in many places where that is needed, or when it starts happening, it is slow. It doesn't happen as fast as change is needed, or as really would benefit people. But I think there has been good progress.
Tony Blair called him a visionary leader, and according to Bill Clinton, he's one of the greatest leaders of our time. Paul Kagame has helped steer Rwanda out of the shadow of genocide to become one of Africa's top investment destinations. So what exactly is behind Rwanda's amazing transformation? I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Now, Rwanda is experiencing one of the most exciting and fastest periods of growth and socio-economic progress in its history. It was the 10th fastest growing economy in the world during the last decade. Post-genocide adversity was turned into opportunity by creating a national vision called Vision 2020. Now adopted in May of 2012, the plan aims to push the country to middle-income status by targeting a GDP per capita of $1,240 and an average growth rate of 11.5%. It hopes to reduce poverty by 20% and wipe out extreme poverty altogether. Now, by creating an estimated 1.8 million more off-farm jobs and urbanizing 35% of the population, this ambitious blueprint also aims to reduce Rwanda's external dependency by targeting a 28% growth in exports per year and making the private sector the engine of growth. Now, Famida Miller had the chance to sit down with the man himself at the recent African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
The New York Times has said of Rwanda that no country in Africa, if not the world, has so thoroughly turned itself round in so short a period. Last year, Fitch Ratings agency boosted Rwanda's credit rating to a B+. And the country has also been hailed worldwide for its successful empowerment of women, and much of it is due to one man. For almost 15 years, President Paul Kagame has been at the helm of steering Rwanda into one of the 10 most improved economies, and that's according to the World Bank. Between 2001 and 2012, the country's seen an average growth of 8%, driving the poverty level down by as much as 14%. I asked the president about his country's status as an increasingly attractive investment destination. Your Excellency, President Paul Kagame, thank you for joining us today. Now, Mr. Kagame, looking at the programs around the African Union, do you see their work translating to changes on the ground? And what does it mean for the citizen on the ground?
There has been good progress at the AU level. The fact that even the chairperson of the commission of AU is a woman, capable woman, and also therefore making sure that the change necessary in different sectors really happens. And countries have been witnessing different changes at a national level, some faster than others in realizing that change. Others very slow, but we have to move together. We have to make sure that the change we want, the experience we want, happens everywhere, and we are looking at the continent as a whole. So there is still a lot of work to do, absolutely. There is no question about it, that there is need for people to do many things that need to be done that probably that is not happening. This is a moment to really, urge people to reflect, to say we need to be moving faster, we need to be doing more. We can't just keep talking about things and not doing much of what we have committed ourselves to.
I just wanted to look a little bit closer at Rwanda for a moment. It's seen a lot of praise also with regard to radical reforms in its economic sector, and to the point where it's one of the preferred destinations for investors in sub-Saharan Africa. Are those reforms moving in hand with reforms in the political sector where there has been some criticism?
I don't think any of these reforms would work well if you are not looking at the situation holistically. If we have reformed in the social sector, in the economic sector, we are talking about people. So, and people are the ones being or affected by politics. So I don't think, for example, if we are talking about investing in information and communication technologies, what you're really talking about, you are putting the tools of being informed and of communication in the hands of citizens. What more do the citizens need other than having this freedom to communicate or to be informed? That will influence their actions and understanding so that they are able to make informed choices. That allows freedoms of people to happen and for them to be able, therefore, to freely exercise their responsibility in any way that is social, economic, or political. So it's going to be hard to say, well, I reform here, but here I will not. Then they are so intertwined that if you want to move on one without moving on the other, you probably don't go anywhere. So the progress Rwanda has made, it can't be by accident. And the progress can't be on the basis of doing wrong things somewhere else. Otherwise, it will definitely affect what you see. And really, we don't do anything for praise. We don't need anybody's praise. We do things just because we think they are good for us. They are good for our citizens. And they allow us to have the investments coming in as they should, because we know what investments are looking for. They are looking for stability, looking for security, good returns on their investments, and so on and so forth. And it's not just investments. We're not doing the investments in a vacuum. We want investments to come and be best in our country, to benefit our people as well. You can't come in and make money and just go out unless something has also gone into the hands of the people where you are getting money from. So the moment we improve people's lives through business and other investments we have made to empower them, through education, through improving their health, the political side really becomes a very simple thing because these people, and by the way, if you do wrong things politically, then it will backfire, because the same people will demand accountability. They will, build on the strengths they have built to question that certain things are happening. Yes.
Paul Kagame on the economic developments taking place in his country. Well, joining me now in studio, David OWIRO, Program Officer at the Institute of Economic Affairs, and Dr. KARANJA MBUGUA, Senior Policy Analyst at the African Policy Institute. Dr. KARANJA, I'll start off with you there. When you improve people's lives, then the political side becomes simpler, because the same people will be aware and they will demand accountability. So says President Kagame. He has accepted that when you have economic empowerment, then the political side really doesn't matter. Your take? I
think I agree with him, but to a certain extent. Yes, you need to improve people's economic lives, and at the same time, you also need to deal with the political developments.
Is the economic transformation side of President Kagame, that is what is behind this transformation of Rwanda?
Yes, there I agree with him, and he's done well on the economic front.
All right, Mr. OWIRO, your take?
He's mentioned one thing very clearly, that if, for instance, you use ICT, information, communications and technology, if you use ICT and to leverage ICT to empower people, they will be empowered both economically, socially, politically, and so forth. And you actually, as a result, have increased welfare for your people. So it's very clear, even from the kind of steps that Rwanda has taken, that there's a lot of long-term visioning, there's a lot of long-term planning. And he seems to have a very clear mind in terms of where Rwanda needs to be in the next medium-term and long-term period. All
right, we'll hear more about this. Gentlemen, we'll take a short break now. We'll be back with more from Paul Kagame after this. Welcome back to the program. Now we are discussing Rwanda's phenomenal transformation from a post-conflict country to one of Africa's most successful stories. Today we are having a conversation with the architect of that change, Rwanda's President Paul Kagame. Here's Famida Miller.
Now, one of the major issues that the summit is meant to address is that of Boko Haram. How do you view the regional response to that threat as well as the AU's approach?
I think that has been very slow also in a very urgent situation like that. Everyone wishes more could have been done and faster. Evidently, the suffering in that situation is to an unacceptable level. Countries concerned should be working together to put something in place to deal with that. All of us should be chipping in and making our own contribution. It's something we should not be allowing to go on like this.
What security challenges does Rwanda have, especially considering that it shares a border with the eastern DR Congo, pose to the country?
This is another issue that really has taken too much time, too much attention, affected lives of people on the ground when it shouldn't have happened and when it is also easy to deal with. But it requires nation states to manage their affairs, their responsibility, the way that should be happening, and it requires people working together and really isolating specific problems that underlie what is happening and dealing with that. Otherwise, looking at the level of resources and attention and so much put in, so little resulting from that. I think for me it's pathetic. Given the number of years, given the whole world's attention to the problem, and all of us here on the ground who should be dealing with this, to keep, having issues in Eastern Congo affecting Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi, and threatening to go beyond, and having, tentacles reaching so far away from that region, where we have seen the leaders of these negative groups enjoying some freedom so far away from the region, from the continent, is absolutely pathetic.
What is needed to bring peace? And we're looking at a number of issues across the continent, whether it's in the Central African Republic, whether it is in South Sudan, those issues in the Great Lakes region. It may be very broad, but what is going wrong?
What is going wrong mainly is best inside, on the continent, in our countries and so on, before we bring in external factors which are definitely there and affect largely these situations. But if our own governments, if our own institutions that should be taking care of our own business and addressing concerns of citizens and working with them to address their issues. If we don't build these capacities that should enable us to deal with socio-economic challenges or security arising out of different grievances, legitimate, illegitimate grievances, and so on and so forth, then we don't expect, I don't think we should be expecting that a solution will just be parachuted from outside, you know, to deliver on many things we want to see happen. We have to just admit that we need to confront these hardships directly and stop blaming just one another for this or for that, and say, now, okay, let's get together, let's pool our resources, let's you know, have no excuses about dealing with these issues. I mean, if you look at, okay, Southern Sudan. South Sudan is a very young nation which had fought wars for long, and, you know, because of course the clear assumption and also the reality should be the wars were going on for certain grievances. They said they wanted something, so they got it. They became the youngest nation, and then things started happening internally, really more internally than from outside. So I think the leaders in South Sudan or in other situations, they really need to get together, and whoever has a grievance can have it addressed by considering other things that affect other people as well. That's how. Otherwise, I don't think we should expect a ready-made solution from anywhere to say, either from the UN or from whichever of these powerful countries, to say, this is a solution for you. I don't think it will ever come.
Paul Kagame there speaking about the troubles of the Great Lakes region. Dr. MBUGUA, of course, there, the whole question of the DRC and peacekeeping there, it has been a thorny issue for Rwanda.
Yes, it has. Unfortunately, Rwanda is deeply involved in the DRC. One, there's a problem of FLDR, which is essentially a Rwandese problem that was exported to the DRC. Now, unfortunately, Rwanda under President Kagame has treated FLDR as if it is a Congolese problem. It is a Rwandese problem and needs to be looked at from that point of view. Two, there's a problem of M23.
Right.
M23 is a Congolese problem because the people who are involved, regardless of their Banyarwanda ethnicity, are Congolese. But there's a lot of ethnic sympathy in Rwanda for these fellows.
He does of course acknowledge that this problem has gone on for too long, that the world has been watching for too long, and he does term it pathetic.
It is pathetic. Unfortunately, the solution from the Rwandese side is very much military, and the way they have approached the problem, there was no way it could be resolved. They needed to work with the government of Congo. It's a very deep problem, and it involves the former CNDP, who are now M23, who are essentially Congolese, but of Rwandese descent.
Mr. OWIRO, though, there, this whole question of the world has been watching for too long. A lot of resources have gone into the DRC conflict, and not much has come out of it. This is becoming a rather troubling situation, not just for Rwanda, but for the region as well.
Certainly, you're right in your observation, and I'm glad even the President Kagame has lamented about this, that as the AU, the response has been slow, and AU members haven't been chipping in to solve the conflicts emerging within the Great Lakes area. And he even cites that, look, there is no ready-made solution that's going to come from the outside. We have to come in by our own selves and find our own solutions. So to my mind, this just goes to underlining the need for the AU to take action. More recently, though, we've seen them taking action in the South Sudanese conflict, for instance, and Somalia, for
Should
instance.
Rwanda, though, be more involved? in
Yes, they
finding a
should be.
solution?
Certainly they should be, because they are actually the primary concerned, or rather primarily affected country if you look at the conflict in the Eastern Congo.
We want aid is another word that President Kagame has talked about. We want aid that fills the gap, not as a dependency. Paul Kagame has been emphatic on Africa's need to wean itself from dependency. That's litany.
The ICC is losing a lot of favor with African leadership. What is your stance on that, and what the alternatives may be?
Well, from the beginning in Rwanda, we have confronted our own challenges of reconciliation, of justice, of dealing with the legacy of genocide left behind for us to sort out. We have always sought solutions from within, but also benefited from partnerships and support of others from outside. So in the same way, I think African issues can be addressed like that. Sometimes political solutions are really combined. There are many things you have to bring into play. Reconciling people, proper governance. Then there are parts that remain for justice. For example, in our case, we found that there are those masterminds of genocide, the real hardcore criminals who have blood on their hands, who cannot find excuse in the politics or justification in the politics. Those ones have to face justice. But there are others who got involved in the crime, either who were influenced into doing it or forced to do it, and so on and so forth. So we've got to make sure that you give them a chance. You apply other means. You seek remorse from them. So that you are able to build a society by narrowing these gaps in the understanding of their grievances and be able to move forward. But if everything is going to say, well, you did this, you said this, go to the court, already fine. As a principle, you may be wanting to hold somebody accountable to go to the courts. But you have messed up another side that is so meaningful to the people of the country, and that is if these people are getting together and saying, okay, I'm sorry, we shouldn't have done this, we should never do this again, let's put our past behind us. If you miss this, you have almost missed really everything. So you've got to find a way of isolating some of the cases. And this can't always be happening from outside. You can't have, a lens through which you look at things inside of the country from outside and keep saying, no, I want that one, I need this one. And a different kind of politics starts playing into that and messes up the kind of politics that people wanted, that would give them peace on the ground. So this is where we stand. This is where we think, therefore, the solution should have been, why don't we really insist on improving and putting in place African solutions, country-specific solutions to apply on meeting some of these challenges. Then we can also have a level of cooperation and working together with the outside institutions or other global institutions. But to allow one to, be solely responsible for sorting things out the way they want, then we find other influences also operate in that, and we find most of them are related to certain interests that really, in the end, don't play well for the solutions that were desired by the country. Yes.
Now, just as we wrap up, President Kagame, one of the issues that you've been a bit critical of is that of aid, not entirely ruling it out, but concerns about who it benefits, what areas it benefits, if that's been identified properly. Yeah. Do you want to see aid restructured?
I want to see many things restructured. I don't, again, see aid as the beginning and the end as such. I see aid as part of a development process of our societies. So naturally, I've got to think about what is the best way people can benefit from aid. Is it aid that comes, spent, finished, so you need more aid? No, it doesn't make sense. I think for me, and I'm sure for many other probably reasonable people, to put it that way, you want aid that comes to fill the gaps that exist, that indeed will save children from dying of diseases that could be prevented, or other people. But you've got to say, this comes to do it, but it comes to do it in a way that capacities are built. There are people who turn aid into an industry, and it's like every time for them they must show misery in order for people to mobilize aid for this and that. But I think to be fair to all of us, I mean to each other, there are those with very good intentions, and I'm sure those ones fit in my kind of argument. The argument that the aid is really to, help those who need help, short, medium, long term, but also empower people to be able to stand on their own. It's not something, maybe if it was needed here, so you should solve that problem and switch it somewhere else where it is coming up. I don't think we need to go on forever with this talk about, somebody has said this about aid, or has said a different thing about aid. That's really not the issue, that's missing the point.
Right. President Kagame, thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, let's get a wrap up now over President Kagame's interview there. David, he did talk about two things there. One, of course, the whole question of Africa's relationship with the ICC, and the other about it. First, the ICC option. He does differ with some of Africa's leaders who claim or who say that they want to completely sever their links with the ICC.
Yeah, and you can understand that sentiment, because if you look at the role that the ICC played in resolving the aftermath of the genocide in Rwanda, perhaps he understands, and there's a broader perspective of the role that the international community can play. But also, he mentions an important point, that perhaps where the African court can add value is for there to be African-led solutions. So that, and he gives the example of Rwanda, where he says that it is their own internal solutions through their own reflection and so forth that led to the kind of reforms that they now have.
All right, Dr. MBUGUA.
I want to comment on 2 points that he's mentioned. One is regarding aid. In my Africa, for me, it does not need aid. What we need is fairer global trade. Because for now, the whole setup of the global or international trade is skewed against Africa. So in the short term, we may have aid. In the long term, what we need is a fairer international trade system.
Gentlemen, we leave it there for the moment. David, OWIRO, and Dr. KARANJA MBUGUA, I do thank you very much for being on this edition of Talk Africa. Well, that's the show for this week. Thank you all for joining me. I'm Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Goodbye.